Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode. I believe we are on episode 9. In today's episode, what we are going to do is discuss how to incorporate graphical user interfaces into our game. The game is just like any other application, and all applications need to have some sort of a user interface for the user to be able to either interact with the application or receive data from the application. So today we are going to take a look at how to incorporate a graphical user interface into our existing example. So let's go ahead and jump into the IDE and take a look at how to design it and then how to program it. All right, so let's jump into the IDE and take a quick look and see what has been done since our previous episode. So as you can see, I have updated the level a little bit, so it looks a little more nicer. It's filled a little better. But most importantly, let's concentrate on why we are here. And the reason we are here is to see how we can incorporate some sort of a graphical user interface into our game. On the game window, you will notice that I already have the actual UI being displayed over here. So we have the player side and then we have the enemy side. On the player side, what you would see is that we display back to the player the number of bullets that they have, that's represented by this, and the number of resources that they have collected. And on the enemy side, we are going to show to the player the number of enemy agents that are active in the world. And this other is just for information and demonstration purposes. But basically, it's going to show how many or how much resources that the enemy has collected, right? So this is the number of bullets that the player has, number of the resources that the player has collected, number of enemy units or agents that are active in the game at the current time, and number of resources that the enemy has collected. Okay, so in order for us to be able to create a UI, we need to understand the concept for a canvas. A canvas is a surface that will be utilized to render all of your graphical user elements. So think of it as actually a container, a window container, where you can render all of the UI elements in there. And in this particular case, before we jump into this, you need to kind of first decide how your UI is going to be laid out. And based on the layout, you need to start subdividing your screen into the appropriate regions, right? So in this case, what I have done is that I have decided to display all of the information back to the user at the top of the screen. So what I have done is that I used what's called a panel. And here is the panel container. And a panel is just a container, right? A container is a piece of a layout element where it would allow you to group related information together. So in this case, I have a panel. I call it main panel. And notice on this side that on the rect transform, not a transform, a rect transform. So UI elements have a rect transform. Over here, you would notice that it'll give you some sort of a alignment window that you can click on and display and select some of the predefined alignments that are already out of the box. So what I've told this particular panel to do is to align itself to the top of the screen and stretch it all the way. And we have set this height of the panel to 75. So we have 75 pixels to work with. The second thing that I have done is that I decided to make the left side of the screen the player data to be showed back to the player. And on the right side is going to be the enemy data being showed back to the player. So those are also constructed or grouped into panels. So within the main panel, I have two additional panels. One of them is for the player panel, and the second one is for the enemy panel. And notice over here that the player panel is aligned. The rect transform is aligned to the left side of the screen, and the enemies panel is aligned to the right side of the screen. If I go ahead and expand the panel, within the panel, I have two other containers. The first one being the grouping of that will represent the first button, and the second one is going to be the grouping container that will basically represent the second uh, eventually button over here. Even though these are not buttons, um, these are containers that we might later on want to turn them into buttons, but currently they are not buttons. Okay, I just named them like that. So they're just containers for information. But if we drill down, we would notice that now that container has more elements. Now, these are the actual UI elements. So we have one image, UI image, and you can tell that it's an image by having this image component associated with it. But this is a special type of a image. It's called the image mask because we also applied a mask component to it. And basically what a mask component will do is that it will determine which parts of the children that are associated with this particular UI element are going to be visible. For example, this particular mask has the circular texture over here. So anything that falls into this white area is going to pass through and render to the screen. And anything that is not there is going to be ignored and it's not going to be rendered. The actual image itself, the image that contains the texture that represents the bullet over here, is handled by this secondary image element. And if you take a look at our inspector, you would see in the inspector, this is our image. It's pointing to the bullet texture, which is represented by this particular texture. And it's basically being rendered based on according to what will be allowed through the mask and its alignment. In this case, it's aligned to the center of the container. And we have a specific dimensions for it, 65 by 65. Our buttons themselves are 75 by 75. So we have a kind of like a 10 pixel padding from each corner. The second grouping and UI element would be this caption background, which is going to represent the actual text that's going to be displayed. And again, I have a panel which kind of provides that specific semi-transparent background so that it's going to be visible. The text that we render on the screen is going to have some contrast there, but the actual text itself is going to be handled through this Text Mesh Pro element, which is a Text Mesh Pro UI element. And that's how we basically will display the information back to the user. The same construct, the same exact structure applies to each one of the other button containers or UI element containers, right? And so I'm not going to go deep down in them because they're pretty much the same. The difference is that they do reference different types of textures. And basically what you're seeing is that for the bullet, we have the bullet texture, we have the resources texture for the player. Then we have a texture that's representing the enemy agents. And then we are using the same texture for the enemy resources as well. All right. So this is kind of how the UI is constructed and put together. So now let's see how we can actually control these things. So in order for us to be able to update the information on the UI, we need to do some coding. First, let's take a look at this new concept called a UI manager. So I created an empty game object over here, and we created a UI manager. And let's go ahead and bring up this UI manager. In the UI manager, you would notice that we have four text mesh pro text data types that are public. And these are going to reference each one of those labels that we just saw at the designer. So this is going to reference the caption for the player bullets, and this is going to refer to the resources for the player from the screen. Similarly, number of enemy units and enemy resources. So we are going to associate the actual labels. If you click on them, you simply you drag and drop these things over here. By default, they're going to be null, empty. So make sure that you actually refer to them and reference them. You should drag and drop it right there. And now we have a reference to each one of these particular TMPs. TMPs being the text mesh pro components. Okay. Now that we have access to them, it means that in our code, we can change their values. Okay. So at the start of the game, we are going to set the caption for the enemy and the player resources to 0. We also are going to set the initial count for the enemy using a game manager class. We'll take a look at that. And then as well as we are going to set the number of bullets that the player has through the player attack controller, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So we have the player attack component where at the start of its code, what it's going to do is going to invoke a delegate function. We talked about these delegates and what delegates do. So go and check out the previous episode if you missed it. We discuss what delegates are and what custom events are. So basically what we are doing is that at the start, we are invoking our onUpdate player ammo, and we are passing the number of bullets that currently the player has. So this is sending out a message, and this message is being broadcast. And one of the classes that is consuming or listening to this message is the UI manager. In the UI manager, what we are doing is that on the enabled and on the disabled, these are two other lifecycle functions that are within mono behavior. So on enable, what we are doing is that we are checking the onUpdate player ammo event to see if it exists, right? So basically what we are doing is that we are subscribing to it right here, right? So we are subscribing to that particular event, and whenever that event is raised, this function over here within this particular class that's interested to receiving that message is going to perform basically perform whatever it needs to do, right? This is the delegate function, basically. This is the delegate function that gets invoked for this particular class that's subscribed to that particular event. So anytime onUpdate player ammo event is raised, we get the value. And what we are doing is that we are updating the caption of the player bullets text to that particular value. Okay, so this is how we send and receive information. And this is done pretty much with everything else, right? So we have it for the onUpdate player ammo, we have it for onUpdate player resources, we have it for onUpdate enemy count, and we have it on update enemy resources. So each one of these specific events are going to be listened for and listened to, and whenever they are received, their specific functions, the delegate functions, are going to handle them. And basically in this case, again, they're pretty straightforward. All they're doing is that updating the UI, right? They're updating the UI to with whatever value that currently exists in the game state. Okay, so that's the UI manager. So now let's go back to our game, and let's go ahead and just click on play here, okay, so notice over here, let's pause this. Notice over here that we have 0 and 0 for both the player resource and the enemy resource, which is true at this point. Initially, they're all 0 because we also set it to 0 in the UI manager. But notice that the number of bullets got updated to 12, and the number of enemy agents that are active in the world got updated to 4, right? So this we already saw where it's coming from, right? So this is coming from the player attack script when it's raising that particular event on update player ammo, right? So during its start, whenever it gets initiated, it's updating the UI with the number of bullets that it has. But let's see where this one is coming from. The actual number of agents in the existing world is going to come from what usually we have. It's called a game manager. And again, this is a super simple one. And all it's going to do is keep track of number of agents that we have in the game. So if you double click on the game manager, over here, you would see that it has a couple of things going on. So let's take a look at the start function first. So in the start function, what's happening is that we are going to find all the game objects with the tag of enemy, and we convert that to a list. And then basically what we are doing is that we are storing the number of enemies that we have detected in our internal data variable. And then we are sending or invoking our own custom event on update enemy count, and we are passing the number of enemies that we currently have, right? So this particular custom event and delegate that have been defined here on update enemy count will be invoked in 2 places. One at the beginning of the game, where it's going to collect all of the enemy agents that are existing in the world and basically updating the UI based on that. And the second one, the enemy is going to die over here, but we'll go ahead and talk about this as well once we get there. So let's go back to our runtime. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the resources because we are going to need our resources. So let's quickly go and get this other one as well. So while we are going to navigate around the level, keep an eye on the actual UI. So notice that the enemy already collected 9 resources over there, right? And we collected only 3. Again, that's because the way I have put this together is that the enemy has more resources that it can collect in relation to us. So this illustrates the update mechanism of those particular data types that we are interested in. If I go ahead and start consuming my bullets, notice that each time when I fire, we get a reduction of the quantity of the bullets. So I'm going to go back and get more bullets from our storage facility. So let's wait here, picked up 1 unit, 2nd unit, 3rd unit, and let's just wait for this guys to also pick up them. There we go. So we picked up about 17 bullets. And notice here that also the health bar for this particular nav agents or NPCs are not 100%. They're not 100%. The reason they're not 100% is because I wanted to illustrate to you how we can eliminate one of them. And when they're not 100%, it's going to be faster for us to do so. So as I'm hitting the enemy, notice that his health bar reduced. And let's try to get rid of this guy. Oops, it's going away. I missed it. All right. All right, so he's gone. So we killed that guy. And notice that the UI got updated accordingly. And now we have 3 active NPCs. And I'm going to just wait over here because I want to show how there we go. So when I get hit, when the player gets hit, notice that how our health bar is also reducing. We take a look at how that's done. Next. Okay, it's still coming towards me. Let's go ahead and just get rid of this guy as well. There we go. So now we have two. Of course, we have consumed a bunch of bullets over here. So let's go back to our, let's wait until that guy also stores it. Okay, now let's go ahead and pick up a bunch of bullets from the storage. So we can go and see if we can kill the other NPC agents. Okay, so we have 25 bullets now. Let's go to this side of the level where the other two agents are. And over here, these guys have full 100% health. But what I want to do is get into a range. So I want to show you guys when they start hitting us and attacking us. And I'm just going to stay here until, there we go. Okay, both of them. All right, so we got hit a couple of times. So notice how our health is reducing as well as we are being, there we go. And I'm reducing their health and etc. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and pause it right here. And let's see how we can put together the actual health bar for the player and also the NPC. They're kind of pretty much the same, so I'm just going to cover the player aspect of it, and the same applies for the NPC. So the first thing we need to do is actually bring up the player's prefab. And over here, what you would notice is that we also have another canvas. This is a world space canvas. So you would create a canvas. Similarly, you would make it a child of the object that you want the canvas to be associated with. And pretty much over here, I have a panel container. That's the panel container. And more importantly, I have two images. The first image is going to represent the background image of the, and let's go ahead and stop this. So you can actually see what at the runtime it didn't show. So basically the first image is the background image, which is going to represent the health as it's being reduced, which is going to be filled with red, right? So as the health reduces, we're going to see red. So that's static. This is going to be static. The next one is an image as a foreground, which is a child of the background. And this one is utilizing a particular texture that I created. It's just a regular square texture over here. And the difference here is that we are going to change the image type to filled. Okay, there's different types of image types that you can incorporate. Make sure that this one is changed to filled. And then what kind of fill method do we want to apply to it? There's horizontal, vertical, radial 90, 180, and 360, right? So if, let's say, if you want to have a progress bar that's circular or semi-circular, you would go with the 90, 180, or the 360. In our case, it's linear. It's either horizontal or vertical. We are going to go with horizontal. The fill origin, where do you want the fill origin to start and where do you want to end? And basically this this fill amount attribute is going to control what it says, the fill amount of the image. So right now it's at 0. If I keep on increasing this, you would notice that it's filling, and as we reduce it, the background gets displayed. So by default, what happens is that based on the health of the enemy at the start, there's going to be uh, the there's going to be it's actually right here. So in the body, we have the health attack, the player health. Let's go ahead and bring this up. We have a reference to the image that represents the health bar of the player. And at the start of the life cycle, what we are doing is that we are setting the fill amount of this health bar to whatever the health that currently the player has or the unit has and dividing it by 100 to make it normalized between 0 and 1. Okay, so that's what's happening over here. So by default, let's say the player has a health of 100, 100 divided by 100, you get 1. And as it gets hit by the enemy bullets, we keep on losing health. And as the health gets reduced, the fill amount will update accordingly based on that normalization. And eventually you're going to go down to basically 0 health and you're going to die. So that's the basic construct. It's again very this like the simplest way to put together like a either a progress bar or help anything that you need to show some sort of a progress can be very easily done with this. In this particular instance, we are using it to illustrate the player health or the enemy health. Same construct, but different controllers are updating it, right? So again, we have a world space canvas. We have a container. In the container, we have a background image that's going to represent the color you want to showcase once the actual main progress bar is reduced. And then we have the foreground image, right? So the background image is going to be filled with the red color using the same progress fill texture, but it's white, so we are applying red to it. And same thing with the foreground image, which is going to be referencing that particular texture again, but this time you're coloring it green. Okay, super easy. Same thing if I jump out of here and go to our enemy capsule. It's the same constructs, right? We have so again, once I made one for the enemy for the player, I copied that and brought it over and pasted it into here. Same structure. You might have to adjust some of the positioning up here. You want it to be center to the actual unit. Might want to adjust the Y position, but the X and Z, in my case, I want it to be exactly at the center. The white, obviously, I'm displacing it, so you can use this to displace it as much as you want. I like it to be at 1.5. So same thing, we have the container, and then we have the two images, one of them being the background, one of them being the foreground. And then if you take a look at the body transform, we have the enemy health. Inside the enemy health, we also have a reference to the enemy health bar, where at the beginning we fill it with whatever that number is at design time. And then each time a bullet gets collided with the body, we are reducing it by 10 and then updating our fill amount in a normalized fashion. And that is it. So let's go ahead, UI Manager over here. Let's go to our main canvas, player capsule. And that's basically what it is. So once we click on play, you would notice that all of the initial values that need to be updated have been updated, right? So our health is 100 at the beginning, so this has been filled accordingly. And if I run over at design time, if I go ahead and select, go to our enemies over there, let's jump to get closer to them. You will notice that theirs have been also, looks like when I went into the prefab, the Y got misaligned. So let's go ahead and fix that quickly. I noticed this happening. I'm not sure why this keeps on happening, but there's something fishy going on with some of the new UI elements. There we go. Now it's properly done. Okay, so now they're the way it's supposed to be. Okay, let's select on one of these guys. And notice if we jump to their body, the health is gonna be is set to 50 to illustrate quick elimination of them and how they update the actual uh, UI for the count. And notice over here that during the start of its life cycle, they got updated accordingly based on whatever value that were initially assigned to them. So if I go closer again, and if I try to, there, I missed it. So let's move over here. Let's see if we can. There we go. So we can get rid of this game rather quickly. Not so quickly, it seems. I have one more bullet, and I forgot to enable the resources. Okay, I got this guy. Okay, but I don't have any more bullets, so I gotta quickly go back, and I did not actually find any of the resource groupings. So let's do that quickly. Instantiate our collector, and similarly, let's go ahead and get the other one. Well, these guys are actually going to store into the storage. Let's go back to our uh, storage controllers and talk about the delegates that are going to be responsible for updating the player resource and the enemy resources. So again, similar functionality. So let's just cover one of them. So we have one for updating the player resource. So let's go ahead and see where this is happening. So at the start, we are invoking update player resource and updated resources. And generally speaking, what we are doing over here is that each time we get a resource, in this case, the user gets a resource, we check to see if this is the player storage or the enemy storage. And accordingly, what we are doing is that we are invoking that update player resources event and passing in the actual stored resources that we have. So it's the same event, one event being used for increasing or decreasing, because basically all we are doing is that we are passing the stored resources. We have seen how to handle all of this logic and game mechanics in episode 8. So if you haven't seen episode 8, go ahead and take a look at that. That's going to explain all of the actual mechanics. Over here, all we are doing is that we are updating these two particular um, conditions where we are updating or sending a message to the UI manager. And in the UI manager, we are updating the player resources or the enemy resources according to whatever value that was passed to it from those events. Okay, and so that should cover that part. Okay, so we do have some resources over here. Let's go ahead and pick it up. And unfortunately, once you leave the Unity editor, the playtime pauses. So uh, we have to wait to collect more. Okay, so I have 9 bullets now. Let's go back, head over to our NPC or the enemy base, and let's see if we can take out this guy. So let's take this guy out and finish the, oops, I'm out of bullets again. As you can see, even a simple game like this, sometimes the gameplay becomes kind of challenging. That's the whole point of incorporating some of the simple game mechanics in there, giving the player time to run back and forth between destinations to meet their objectives. So let's see, where is that NPC agent now? Let's see if we can find them. Interesting. Where did it go? Maybe it went to the other side. Nope, that's not the one. And that's not the one. Did it come all the way here to our base? Maybe, maybe not. Oh, yes, it did. Okay, let's go ahead and try to kill this guy. And we got him. All right, so this is where I would like to pause. And let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen. All right. All right. So hopefully this was another nice little demonstration illustrating how you can incorporate the game mechanics and now apply some graphical user interfaces on top of it to make it a little more informative and engaging for the player. And as I promised you guys, I am working on putting together a nice package where you can download the source code and all of the stuff that we are covering rather quickly and easily. So I'm planning on doing this within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Make sure to like and subscribe. I have also created a Patreon page. If you get a chance, you can become a member over there as well. There's two types of memberships. There's the free membership, and then there's the paid membership. In the paid membership, that would help me create more content in the future and better content in the future, and having a better way of explaining things. More importantly, it'll give you guys access to some more other advanced private material that I'm building and going to be releasing in the near future. Having said that, thank you very much for stopping by and watching. Please like and subscribe, and see you guys soon. Have a good one. Bye.